The more financially messed up a founder is, the bigger the vision becomes. Those inflated dreams don't just fool the founder themselves, but they lure in employees, customers, and even investors, and it causes massive destruction. We're going to talk about something that's a little taboo, share some war stories, and let's get straight into it. I've had front row seats to this madness various times. In this video, I'm going to uncover this founder's delusion, why it's so dangerous, and what you can do to avoid it. I'm also going to give you my brutally honest view later, so stick around. My name is Jody. I've been in the business operations space for 12 years. I've been chief operating officer 3 times, twice at the group level, right? So portfolio of companies. And I've seen a lot of chaos. I deal with a lot of management, execution, and madness. So I've seen a lot of things. I've worked with a lot of founders through run-ups through my consulting firm, around 50 now over the last more than a decade, right? What I have experienced is some form of founder's delusion. I've worked with founders that just have delusion. I don't know how to better explain myself, but it is a delusion. There's a point where vision and delusion becomes kind of blurry, and I've definitely seen the delusion side of things. And nobody talks about the negative side of these things, maybe because it might crash somebody's vibe. Everyone wants to constantly talk about the vision and all the grandiose stuff, but they don't want to talk about the real reality of delusion and pain and suffering that people go through. And this is like a worldwide problem. I don't understand why people don't talk about this more openly. But anyway, I'm going to share this in this video. So, what is this founder's delusional loop? It starts with financial problems. So, it's like this: financial problems, which causes emotional discomfort, which then causes grand promises. The delusion starts here. This kind of grand promise of things, visions, products. We're going to get to billions of dollars of valuation. We're going to get to this market and that market, that sort of delusion. Then somehow people get lured by this, investors and customers, and the founder, the company, receives temporary cash relief, okay, which further confirms that their delusion is correct to some varying degree, but drives the company further into debt because it can never pay it all off, which causes financial problems, right? So financial problems causes emotional discomfort, which causes the founder to make these grand promises, which then creates some temporary cash reliefs because somebody was inspired by it. Either a customer paid or an investor invested, which causes the company to go further into debt because they can never pay off all this stuff. And then it causes financial problems, right? So that's the loop. So how did this all begin? Actually, it always starts. That's why I'm an operator, but I'm always just driven by finances because it gives you all the answers right then and there. Where it begins is the founders that typically have this delusion don't look at their financial statements. They're completely financially illiterate. Oftentimes, I've seen a negative balance sheet, which is very dangerous, by the way. I don't know if whoever's watching this understands financial statements. A negative balance sheet is extremely dangerous unless you know what you're doing. Actually, in some cases, it means that you're completely broke. If like you can find the terminology on the internet, it literally means you can't pay off your obligations. There's it's a soft term, but I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details, but it's not good if you have a negative balance sheet or negative equity. And then, of course, 10 times out of 10, negative cash flows. There'll be one month where there's a massive spike up, but typically out of the 12 months in a year, you're talking at least 8 of those months are negative cash flow generating months. So, 'cause, 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 'c this heightened moment of emotional discomfort, which comes from the financial condition of situation of their company, typically happens at the end of the month. Interesting, right? Because again, I've seen this so many times. Why is the founder, the delusion and the discomfort and all these things that they're saying usually happens at the end of the month? Why? What is due at the end of the month, typically speaking, for most companies? In some countries, it's different. Payroll. A lot of payments are due either at the first or at the end of the month. Sometimes, again, some countries they operate, they pay in certain, maybe in the middle of the month or whatever. In New Zealand, I believe it's on the 16th. What I'm trying to say is the emotional discomfort is pegged to when there's a large amount of expenses that need to go out. This is like clockwork. When payroll's due, delusion is at its all-time high. So more arguments, more aggression, a lot more fluff happens. So I get taken to a lot of meetings, a lot of powwows, a lot of, hey, we're gonna get into this market, we're gonna do this thing, we're gonna do that thing, we're gonna expand, we're gonna expand to this product line and this and this. The delusion happens typically right around the period where a lot of expenses are due, and the founder doesn't have the money, the company doesn't have the money to pay for these things. So it's obviously an escape mechanism. The delusion and the connection between the financial discomfort, the delusion is obviously an escape mechanism because the founder doesn't know, doesn't want to know, doesn't understand why they're feeling this discomfort. They actually believe the delusion. This is not a this is not a facade. I've never had a founder come up to me on at dinner time when they're doing their, "Oh, we're gonna go into this market, we're gonna go to that market, Jody. You're gonna get rich off of this." I've heard this so many times. "You're gonna get rich working with me." All this jazz. Never. I always sometimes I'm like having dinner and I'm like, "Is tonight gonna be the night where they pull the mask off and like, but man, we're completely broke, you know? Like, I wish they would just do that, but they don't because they actually believe it. This is real. They believe it. They're so close in their mind. They're one step away from millions and $1 billion of valuation. The next part of this is the employee effect. In order for the delusion to continue, there needs to be some form of confirmation bias, right? Something needs to happen, and in their mind, they're like, yes, see, I was able to attract payment from an investor, as I mentioned, or payment from a customer. So it reaffirms that their delusion gets to continue. Well, one of the other ways that this loop continues is through the employees. So typically what I've seen, they hire subpar employees, folks that are not very qualified or have lots of potential. They underpay them, and what they do is get them sold on the grand dream. That's how they maintain employees usually for a short period of time. Can be anywhere between months to 3 years, they start losing employees. And you can see this over and over again. So much churn because they find somebody who's like super mesmerized. I myself have seen this. Super mesmerized by the founder and what they say. They hop on board, they promise the grand dream, they pay not much, and then you get sucked in from that side. So again, it confirms the delusion. Like this person's listening to me. Why would this employee work for another company and not, why would this employee work for my company, not another company, and so on? And this confirms the delusion. So there's another aspect to this, and that is the customer connection to this loop. Customers also get mesmerized by these founders. The founders mesmerize them with the things that they say and lure them in and like, hey, you know, I'll give you a discount, whatever it is. They play all the tricks in the books. I'll give me some money now and I'll put a discount in your next order or whatever it is. I'll pull out every single string because they're so desperate for cash. They'll say whatever. They say whatever and they really believe it, right? This is not like a scam. In their mind, it's not a scam at all. They actually believe it. The customer also believes it because typically these founders overhype. I don't want to say lie. To me, it's a lie, but they overhype things. Into their mind, it's not a lie, and they can explain how it's not a lie. The customer gets hyped up on these features, roadmaps, or products that never materialize. The next part and the last part I want to say about this founder's delusion is around the funds temporarily extending the life of this chaos. What happens when a founder is able to attract the investor or the customer, receives the temporary cash relief? Long term, all it does, it amplifies the damage long term. So if the company explodes and can't pay its obligations, it goes bankrupt, because it's taken on so much of this temporary relief, what happens is the balance sheet becomes more and more negative over time. So once the company becomes bankrupt, the balance sheet is so negative, it amplifies the destruction upon the bankruptcy day. The best case scenario, literally the best case, this is the only way, is that the delusion just continues the story as is. So the founder doesn't break through any revenue ceiling. It doesn't really get into any new markets. It doesn't really launch any new products. It just stays the same for years and years and years. I've seen this as well. I've seen this very intimately, where the founder stays running in the same spot for years because they don't look at the financial statements. They don't see that the company's capped out at $2 or $3 million a year. It hasn't made anything more than $2 or $3 million a year for the last 7 years. And the founder genuinely, because he doesn't ever read the financial statements, believes that there's more progress. Progress is actually happening because there's new customers. There's new stuff happening. But in reality, everything else is the same. We just the same problems, the same discomfort, the same arguments, the same thing, different employees, just different customers. But literally the company has not gone anywhere. There are no new asset purchases. They haven't gone into any new markets. They might have started a new bullcrap sort of project that isn't working either. There's nothing, there's no reality where the actual value of the company has increased. They haven't bought anything new. They haven't received any more new money. It's just continuing the loop over and over again. And this is where the founder becomes a slave to their own machine. Pretty wild to see this. And it's kind of sad, to be honest with you. Okay. So I threw all this into ChatGPT, right? To see what kind of value I could share with you so you don't go through these sorts of things. What ChatGPT said is, be honest with yourself and your team. Good old ChatGPT. You're nice, man. Set realistic expectations. The founders should pitch and create achievable deadlines and face the facts. I'm laughing because I, as the chief operating officer, have literally explained all these things very clearly with presentations. I've brought in their family sometimes. I've brought in help from outside, and there's just no budging. Founders just don't want to change. These typical founders that I'm thinking of. The experience that I've had, the brutally honest experience that I've had with these founders is that they don't want to change. And so the consequence of that is bankruptcy, or they're continuing their lifestyle. They're just continuing this pain. And they can handle an enormous amount of dysfunction for years. So that's what I've seen. That's the brutally honest truth. Vision inspires, but when it's used to mask financial chaos and becomes manipulation, everyone pays the price. The customer, the investor, the employees for sure, friends and family, and it's very destructive. The companies that last are the ones where vision matches reality, and the founder is tracking that through the financial statements. When I see a founder able to read the financial statements and is able to track what's in their mind to what's in reality, That's where the company becomes successful. That's when I've seen companies have become successful. If you're dealing with management issues, watch this next video to understand how you can better run day-to-day management.